Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's talk about adventure travel. But you know what? Forget everything you think you know about it. Today, we're diving into a company that's not just planning trips. They're literally building a new world. This is the story of Docerus.
You've probably heard this one before, right? It's that classic adventurer's line. But the folks we're looking at today, they didn't just throw away the map. No, they wanted to tear up the entire rulebook for the travel industry.
So, to really get what they're building, you first have to understand what they were trying to escape. They looked at the traditional way we travel and saw a system that was, well, basically on fire.
Yeah, the founder, Michael Knoll, he really didn't hold back. He's looking at this old world of travel and sees it being just choked by problems. You know the deal, right? The guilt you feel about your carbon footprint, those insane hidden fees from booking sites, and all that digital friction, clunky check-ins, slow websites, it's a mess.
And this really breaks it down, doesn't it? A tale of two models. On one side, you've got the old world, carbon guilt, digital friction, all that junk. But on the other, that's their vision, sovereign stewardship. We're talking about going from being part of the problem to part of the solution. And maybe the biggest deal of all, you're not just some tourist getting hit with fees. You're a co-owner of the whole network.
Okay, so if the old world is burning, what do you build from the ashes? They weren't interested in just patching things up. Nah, they were going for a total reinvention of the whole experience.
And this is what they came up with, the world's first Sovereign Adventure DAO. Now, let's just pause on that for a second. That's a mouthful, right? But every single word in there matters. It's about combining extreme adventure with self-sufficient, off-grid tech, all owned and governed by the members themselves through a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO.
And this question is really the whole point. It gets right to the heart of what they're doing. What if you could get totally lost in the wilderness, but still be totally seamlessly connected online? Is that even possible?
And I love this quote because it just nails their promise. The wilderness is calling, and it has gigabyte internet. I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? It's for anyone who's ever tried to take a Zoom call from a shaky coffee shop connection while dreaming of being on a mountaintop. They're saying, hey, you don't have to choose anymore.
Right, but a change this big, it doesn't just happen with the snap of a finger. So let's look at the timeline. Let's see how they pulled off this radical vision in just one single transformative year. So check this out. At the start of 2025, they were still operating as Reboot Eco Tours, really feeling the pain of that broken system. But then, fast forward to Q3, they go to Kabong, Uganda, and they build their first sovereign node. They prove the concept can actually work. And by the end of the year, boom, the old company is gone and the DAO is born. They literally turn their customers into their partners.
Okay, so the vision is huge, but how do they actually make it happen? Let's geek out for a minute and dive into the tech stack that powers this whole thing.
First things first, power. You can't be off-grid if you can't keep the lights on. They use something called Agridot Energy. It's wild. They take local agricultural waste, use this process called plasma gasification to superheat it and turn it into reliable 24/7 electricity. So yeah, the national grid can go down, they won't even notice.
Next up, how do you get in? Forget fumbling for keys or scanning QR codes. They use something called radio frequency fingerprinting. It sounds complicated, but it's simple in practice. Your phone has a unique radio signature, kind of like a fingerprint. The system recognizes your device and poof, doors unlock, vehicles start. It's totally seamless, almost like magic.
Okay, logistics. Getting around in these remote places is always the hardest part, right? That so-called last mile. So, they built a fleet of autonomous rovers called curb cars. And these things are awesome. They're rugged, they drive themselves, and they're not just for getting you from point A to B. They're also mobile power stations. So cool.
And this is the glue that holds it all together, the governance, the DAO. By giving members tokens, they do something really profound. They change you from being just a customer, a tourist, into a sovereign steward. You're not just visiting, you're an owner. You have a say. That's a massive shift. So, you put all this tech together, and what do you get? They call it Project Octagon. And it's basically the ultimate toolkit for what they call the extreme digital nomad. Think about it. An AI that handles all your travel plans, power that literally never goes out, and a giant digital dome of high-speed internet out in the middle of nowhere. Incredible.
So, okay, all this tech is amazing, but so what? Is this just a super fancy high-tech vacation? Well, no. This is where it gets really, really interesting.
Yeah, they're really clear on this point. This is not a tour company. Think of them more like the user interface for a brand new operating system for living. It's an entire ecosystem that's completely independent of all the old rickety systems we rely on. They're building self-sufficient little worlds.
And their ultimate mission? It's to blow up the idea that remote work has to mean compromised work. You know, the idea that you have to choose between a great internet connection and a great location. They're saying you can and you should have both. And really, this goes way beyond just digital nomads. It's a potential blueprint for building more resilient communities, especially in a world where our infrastructure feels more and more fragile.
And here's the kicker. They're not trying to do this all by themselves. They've put out a huge call to builders. They're basically telling founders, developers, creators, hey, we built a foundation, we built a core infrastructure, now come build a future on top of it. We're talking about everything from new logistics apps to tools for scientific research. The possibilities are huge.
Which brings us to the final thought, really. They're not selling trips, they're building a new frontier, and they're looking for pioneers. The sovereign node is waiting. So the only question left is, will you answer the call?